guys, welcome to Elevated Systems. I'm your host CJ. Today, Fractal Design released their new Pop series of PC cases in both airflow and silence focused configurations. The Pop XL, and the Pop Mini. Today, we'll be checking out the Pop Mini Air, so let's jump right in and take a look at some of the Pop Mini specs and features. The Pop Mini measures 432 millimeters deep by 215 millimeters wide by 393 millimeters tall. The enclosure can hold Mini-ATX or Micro-ATX motherboards. It accommodates CPU coolers up to 170 millimeters tall and graphics cards up to 365 millimeters in its default configuration. The case comes with 3 pre-installed Fractal Aspect 12 RGB 120 millimeter fans pre-installed, 2 intakes in the front between the front of the case and the front panel, and 1 exhaust in the rear. Optional configuration includes replacing the 2 front 120 millimeter fans with a single 140 millimeter fan, or with a 240 millimeter AIO in either a push configuration with the fans mounted on the front of the case, or in a pull with the fans mounted to the radiator inside the case. Note that adding a radiator and fans inside the case does reduce the max length for PCIe devices. There are no pre-installed fans in the top of the case. However, there is room for 2 120s or a single 140, and while a 240 millimeter AIO does fit, screwing it directly to the top panel limits your RAM height clearance to just about 35 millimeters. However, Fractal has solved this problem by providing a set of radiator offset brackets that, when installed, moves the radiator away from the motherboard and allows for RAM clearance of about 48 millimeters. On the top of the case is a magnetic dust filter, as well as the front or top I/O, which includes the power button, an RGB mode switch, headphone and microphone jacks, 2 5 gigabit USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports, and an expansion port for adding an optional 10 gigabit USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port. On the back of the case, we see the 4 bridgeless PCIe expansions. And under the steel panel, there's about 19 millimeters of space for cable management, as well as multiple tie-down points. There is a removable bracket to hold 2 2.5-inch SSDs. This bracket can be mounted in its default position behind the motherboard tray or inside the case on top of the PSU shroud. Under the PSU shroud, there's room to install a power supply up to 150 millimeters, as well as 2 drive trays, which each holds a single 3.5-inch hard drive, a single 2.5-inch SSD, or both. This brings the out-of-the-box total storage capacity for the Pop Mini to 2 3.5-inch hard drives and 4 2.5-inch SSDs. Finally, the front of the case is constructed with an airflow-focused hexagon patterned mesh, and the front of the case also holds a couple of really cool secrets, but we'll get to that in a bit. First, like I've said in all of my case reviews, you can't really get to know a case until you build in it, so that's what I'm gonna do. Now, if you want the details on all the parts I'm putting into this PC build, there's a list in the description below. It's a mid-range gaming PC built on an Intel 12th Gen i5-12400 and an AMD Radeon RX 6600, but rather than focusing on the actual PC in this video, I'm gonna focus on the experience of building the PC in the Fractal Pop Mini. In fact, I've already built and tested the PC on my test bench, and once I get it transferred into the case, we'll see how the thermal performance compares. Let's get into build notes, but as promised, let's reveal the secret this case holds. You may have noticed in some of the B-roll this tiny tag on the front panel of the case, and while it may seem like just some Fractal branding, that's not its purpose. It's actually a pull tab that allows you to remove the magnetic front panel that reveals a hidden storage drawer. You can use this drawer to covertly hide your treasure or to just store some small accessories. But while this hidden storage drawer is neat and offers some functionality, it's mostly a novelty and it's not really a secret. My wife popped in while I was working on this, and the first thing she did was pull the tag, removing the panel and revealing the secret drawer. Tags were made to be pulled. What makes it unique and sets it apart from most modern PC enclosures is the storage drawer actually slides into a dual 5¼ inch optical drive bay. And by removing the top multi-purpose drive tray, I've installed a full-size DVD rewrite drive. There's even still room for the storage drawer in the lower bay and a hard drive and SSD below it. Couple of neat features not typically found in a sub $100 Micro-ATX case. I was gonna say this little case has a little secret, but actually 2 5¼ inch bays in such a compact case nowadays is pretty big. Now, what isn't unique and something Fractal has been criticized for over the years is they just seem to like to build plain rectangular box enclosures. Now, personally, I don't mind rectangular PC cases. They tend to hold my rectangular PC components really well. But besides exposing the secret compartment, my wife also asked why it was so plain. She thought with a name like Pop, it was gonna be more exciting, and I can empathize. However, another thing Fractal is consistent in with their enclosures is their above average quality. Even what is in a sub $100 budget focused case, the tight and even tolerances between panels is commendable. Once you slide the panels on and snap the front panel in place, there's barely room for a sheet of paper to fit between them. The material used, like the thicker steel, and the build quality is excellent and on par with their Define and Torrent line of cases. When building, everything lines up perfectly. You slide the PSU in and the screw holes line up, the motherboard fits into its IO shield and all the standoffs are directly lined up with the mounting points. The graphic card slots into the PCIe lane and lines up perfectly with the expansion slots on the case. There's no pushing or pulling or starting a screw slightly on an angle and pulling it straight like is the case with so many PC enclosures at this price point. I actually didn't run into any significant problems building in this case. Some minor things, I had to remove the SSD tray to fit the PSU in. I used one of my USB 3 ribbon cable extensions to connect the front panel USB cable, as those cables are always a bit clunky for the bottom of a case, especially a compact one. And there are definitely some choices made in the design of the case to keep the cost down. No separate PSU bracket, so no ability to install the power supply from the rear, which is preferable, especially when there's limited room due to all the drive bays. The lack of any grommets on the cable pass-throughs, the use of stamped cable tie-downs rather than clip-on cable channels, thumb screw retained panels rather than latches, 3-pin DC case fans instead of PWM, all those things come on Fractal's higher-end cases, but of course come at a cost, and at the $90 price point aren't things I had expected and didn't really distract from the build experience. Some of them were helpful. The fans are Fractal's cheaper Aspect series, but both the fan and the RGB cables are daisy chainable, and the front IO includes a 3-pin 5-volt RGB header, which is SATA, not Molex powered. I strongly dislike any form of RGB software, so controlling the fan lighting without the need to install proprietary software is nice. The selection of colors and patterns is pretty extensive, and a nice little touch is the power button light matches the fan lights. There was more than enough room for cable management, and although I split the difference with a semi-modular power supply, I did up the difficulty with some metallic cable extensions, and even with most of the basement filled with all that storage, I had no difficulty with cable management. There's actually quite a bit more than the 19mm listed in the spec sheet, especially at the front side of the case. I could have stored a bunch of cable slack over there if I needed to. There was plenty of room at the top and the front side of the case for cable pass-through. However, I did have to feed the cables through the bottom holes before installing the PSU, as the power supply impedes those holes enough that at a minimum the PCIe power cable wouldn't fit. Another nice little detail on the case are the reusable, not snap-off PCIe expansion covers, and that they're bridgeless, which is nice. The last Micro-ATX case I built in, the bridges in the middle of my 2-slot graphics card actually partly blocked the HDMI port. Finally, let's take a look at thermal performance at the Pop Mini Air, and it's pretty simple math. Our average and max CPU temps during the 30-minute AIDA64 stress test were no more than a single degree higher in the case, with GPU temps only 2 or 3 degrees higher. This isn't surprising, as the 12400 and RX 6600 aren't really hot running components, and I think are pretty representative of the tier of PCs most would build in an enclosure like this. But with the open mesh front panel and no secondary filter, this case can handle pretty much any hardware you can fit in there. Large triple plus slot high-end graphic cards may have some issues as the fans get closer to the PSU shroud. Overall, I think the Fractal Pop Mini Air is one of the best built budget Micro-ATX cases I've worked with in quite a long time. The features for the price, especially the hidden 5¼ optical drives, are really nice features for those looking for a modern case with that capability, and sets it apart from its competitors like the Lian Li 205M, the Fantex Evolve MATX, the Thermaltake S100, the Dark Flash DLM22, and this is the only one of those that comes with a mesh front panel, I'm pretty sure. However, while I like the hard edges and very clean design, I understand it does lack the pop the name would imply. So if you want more info on the entire Fractal Pop case lineup, there's a link in the description below. If you want more info on the PC I built in it, I'll be doing a full build guide for it in a few weeks, so be sure to get subscribed for that. And as always, be sure to hit that like, and I hope to see you in the next one.